Hi, everybody, it's Josh with Talk About Trek, and today we're back to talk about Star Trek Voyager, number 2, The Escape. And this is the first original novel based on Voyager, so very special, very fun, um, very interesting book, too, uh, and really a very great job by the authors, Dean Wesley Smith and Kristine Rusch. Because, I mean, this book was written, of course, before the show aired, and they were just basing it off of reading the script and what was it, something like a 30-second clip and some still photos. And just from that, they were able to, I mean, really make well, first off, they did a great job with the characterization. I felt everybody kind of seemed like who they kind of grew into being. Of course, this is like early into it, so everybody's still getting to know each other. But she really nailed like just kind of everybody's attitudes and characters. I think so. Just well done there. Let's just kind of dive right into the back here and see what they say. Based on the hit series Star Trek Voyager, The Escape, Pocketbooks is proud to present the first original novel starring the crew of the starship Voyager. Stranded far across the galaxy, theirs is a voyage of a lifetime that will take them far into uncharted space where no one has gone before. The USS Voyager is in a desperate trouble. Her systems damaged, her warp engines failing. Without immediate repairs, the starship and her crew will be trapped forever between the stars. Captain Kathryn Janeway must guide her ship to an ancient deserted planet that could hold the key to their survival, a planet that is hiding more than one deadly secret. Yeah, so the story kind of picks up with it's the early part of Voyager. So they're damaged, they're in trouble, they're looking to you know scavenge what they can, and they start by trying to get some stuff off of a local like asteroid belt. And they're doing the best they can, but it's deemed kind of too dangerous, and they have to find another source, just like for raw materials, basically. And this is when Neelix comes in and mentions that there's a planet close by that is filled with rows and rows and rows of these deserted ships. But it supposedly is haunted, so people don't go there. So, kind of an interesting premise to start with, right? So, I guess before I get too much into the spoilers of just talking about the story, uh, let's just kind of go into, like the basics of what you're getting here. And again, it's early Voyager, so everybody's still kind of getting to know each other, that kind of thing. But the featured characters here are going to be, I would say, Tuvok, Mr. Paris, the captain, of course, Captain Janeway, and then Kim, Torres, and Neelix. So they kind of get the most time to shine. Not much happens for Chakotay in this, really. But, kind of everybody does get a little bit of something, so that's good. It's very interesting sci-fi story based on time travel, basically. And a very, I don't know, a unique kind of time travel story, one that I've never thought of, or as far as I know of, or have heard before. So, very interesting in that aspect, too. Uh, Paced really well, just kind of kept up going. The characters that they introduced from the planet were good, for the most part. And just the whole, I guess, the idea and the way the society worked was an interesting kind of thought experiment. So I would definitely say that. And again, for where the author is not even seeing the show and just basing this off the script, I think they did a great job with all the characters. So just a great start to the Voyager series here. And just glad to have been able to get into Voyager because I'm really enjoying it a lot so far. So, all right, so now, about 5 minutes in here, we can just kind of talk about the story. So let's dive into what we really thought about the escape. And I'm kind of forgetting myself too. I usually say these kind of technical details here. And, oh, for John Ordover, a good friend and wonderful editor. All right. And this book was published in 1995, of course, by Pocket Books, and comes in at 244 pages. And it's got a pretty decent cover on it with a very stern-looking Tupac. I called him Tupac. Tuvok, as well as Janeway there. So, nice cover. And I think I can actually see it's done by Drew Blair. You can actually read the artist name right there. So, alright, so let's jump in and talk about the escape. So again, Voyager is looking for raw materials, looking for parts, looking for ways to get home faster. So they hear from Neelix about this planet Alkawel. Well, I don't think they know that's the name of it yet, but they hear about this planet that's a dead planet with just rows and rows of ships. So they approach the planet, and that's indeed what they do find. Basically, there are several different continents on this planet, and on each one there are these huge bases, and they describe them to be. So basically, you would go from San Francisco to LA out to Reno, and that's the size of these bases, and the whole bases are filled up with lines and lines of these ships. Oh man, I have a picture of these ships too. I have to find that. I will add that while we're working here. So they get to the planet, and they decide to beam down their first away team just to kind of check it out and see what's going on. And they beam down Kim, Torres, and Neelix, who kind of knows a little bit about the area, to just do the first initial survey of the ships and survey of the area. So they beam down to the planet, and it is bitterly cold, windy, and the sand is blowing everywhere, and it's freezing cold, and just very uncomfortable. They're able to. I think what happened was when they were in orbit, they kind of scanned the ships, and one of the ships seemed to be a little bit more maybe active than the rest of them. So once they did this, then they were able to determine that this is the one that they need to go down and see, and that's what they decided to do. So, oh, hey, there's that picture. It came up. So, and they beamed down, and this is what they found. So, this was a really cool piece of art that I found. It was on the memory beta, and I'm not sure where it actually came from, but it perfectly kind of depicts, of course, the Voyager wouldn't be right there, but this is kind of what the time ships were described to be looking like. And I love this artwork too, because it kind of shows the flash of the old decrepit time ship, and then the new shiny time ship, so that's pretty cool. So anyway, they beam down, and this is what they see, and they go into the one that they find is the working one, or the most active one, or the best one they could look at. So they go in there, and Kim and Torres are doing their job, doing their work, doing their scans, and Neelix is like, I think I just need to sit down and have a rest and have a nap. And as soon as he sits down on the chair, that apparently is the mechanism that activates this ship. The ship lifts off into the air. Though the doors close, it lifts off into the air, and then a moment later just sets back down. But when it sets back down, the away team is suddenly something like 300,000 years in the planet's past, back when the planet was, fully occupied with people. And so they come to the same place that they were, with all these ships lined up, but now they see kind of what it really is, like this giant transportation hub with all these people going to and fro, going into these ships and going to different places. So they're noticed when they get there by the local time cops or whatever, dressed in these orange jumpsuits, and they get busted kind of immediately and hauled into custody. And uh, and it's at this point when they begin like kind of this very interesting. You really have to kind of pay attention when you're reading this book to follow a lot of the time travel stuff, and it's fun because the way that they do it is, say, Balana plans her first escape. Uh, she does the escape, she succeeds, but then these people, the it's called control, that are in charge, are able to immediately jump back in time to the moment before it happened and stop it from happening. And that's called a back time, which is kind of a big deal in their culture to do too, but something they have to do to prevent issues from happening, because of course when you do time travel there's all sorts of paradoxes and problems that can arise, and we will get into that more later. So suffice it to say for now, the away team, trapped back in the past, um, captured by the local authorities, and currently really no way to escape. So now back in the present, Captain Janeway has just saw that ship lift off and land, but it left with the three away team. But when it landed back, there was a, maybe not immediately, but anyway, the away team was gone, and what came back was a new character that they introduced in this novel, whose name is, uh, they do it. It's a K and a J. So do I call him Jander or do I call him Candor? I think I called him Jander in my head, so we're going to call him Jander. Anyway, Jander is kind of looking to escape from control. He's an Alcoelian, and he snuck himself into this time ship so that he could get to the future, to escape from control. And they don't go too much into his motives or anything like that. But he's looking to get into the future, kind of knows what's going on, knows there are these planet hoppers, is what the Alcoelians call, people that travel between stars. So anyway, he knows that they're out there, and he has some sort of plan in mind to escape from control and do something with Voyager. So he travels to the future, while of course the away team's trapped in the past. So, oh, the people here, I guess I should describe them too. They're humanoid. They have some slight differences. I think they have a bigger chin and a smaller forehead, and they also favor having very silly, large, colored hair. So they describe that a lot. Some of them have large red hair, long purple hair, all sorts of crazy things like that. And also very silly shoes. They wear silly shoes, and like kind of like the more important you are, the less you have to walk around, the sillier shoes you get to wear. So it's kind of a funny picture that you can kind of put in your head of these people with silly hair and silly shoes, who are in complete control and mastery of like time around their planet. Um, we have Jander. Now we get to meet the other new character, and this is Mr. Drickle. And Drickle is, they introduce him kind of earlier in it. He lives in like his own little period of time on his planet, and he gets a call that there's been an alarm, and he's got to go to work. So he's like a sort of time agent. And now that the Voyager has arrived, he's got to go do something to scare them off, get them out of there, and resolve the situation. So he gears up and he gets ready to go, and there's some fun scenes there too where you get to see kind of like this inside look at their society, and you don't really know like much about it, but you're getting like this kind of look at it anyway, and it's well done and it's fun, and you kind of, I don't know, this guy kind of almost seems like he's like a secret agent or something on his planet. He's just like and he's kind of like he's like flirting with the ladies who's coming through, and he's got all these buddies he's shaking hands with. But anyway, he gets to come forward in time to scare the Voyager away. And this is, I think, where it gets kind of silly, and honestly, it got like a little Scooby Doo, because one of this guy's main plans, which apparently works for most people because it scared Neelix away, or right, he thought it was a ghost planet, right? But they come in, or he comes in. The first thing he does is he makes a big plate of metal fly. Of course, he has the technology to make himself invisible, and he has like anti-gravity devices and that kind of thing. So he does all that. He makes this thing fly. Tuvok and Paris are there, but he doesn't quite scare them as much, I guess, as he's hoping. But then he makes a whole one of these time ships fly in the air, trying to like scare them. It kind of like flies around and around. At that point, the away team beams up, but Tuvok is not going to be scared off by like some Scooby Doo stuff. I mean, that's just not going to happen, right? So, of course, they buckle down and they kind of realize that, it's not a ghost, of course. It's somebody down there doesn't want us looking at things and is trying to scare us away. So, Starfleet is not going to be deterred by that. So they basically come up with a way to. They beam back down to the planet with more engineering teams. They start taking apart other time ships now, and they figure out that they have to find a way to scan and find this guy, or whoever's doing this. So Paris and Tuvok get to work doing that. Now, when they're doing like their initial scans of the planet and everything, this is when Tuvok finds the hidden tunnel that's underneath all of this stuff, which is what Mr. Drickle used to kind of get to the planet or get to the area and then move up to where they're at. So Paris and Tuvok beam down to this tunnel, which is hundreds of thousands of years old and untouched for that time. So now they're getting covered in like crazy, crazy dust as they go through all this area. So, but Tom Paris is very like determined. He wants to keep going back, and like he keeps going back to the planet to get blasted by the sand and the cold, and then he goes to the dust again. But he just wants to keep trying to help out his friend Harry Kim. So like, again, just right at the very beginning, they've got like, I think they've got such good characterization down, or the authors did in this. So anyway, they go down there and they find Mr. Drickle's time ship down there in the dusty, dusty tunnels. So now they've kind of got an idea of exactly what happened. Someone has come back and is trying to scare them away. So now Tuvok, even more determined, comes up with a way to, kind of scan around and hopefully find this guy. So they go down again and they're trying to do it again. And this is when Drickle's going to like, I'm going to try my best thing I can do. He tries to get 3 of these ships now to try to fly around and spook them. I don't know why he doesn't realize at this point it's not going to work to scare them away like Scooby-Doo style, but he tries it anyway. Tuvok has had enough of this nonsense, and he figures out a way to block the signal being sent to these anti-gravity devices or whatever. He does that, and the ships come crashing down, and Drickle is just barely able to jump out of the way, but is pinned beneath one in his invisibility suit. And there's also some damage to some of the other away team members, so everybody beams back up to sickbay. But then Tuvok and Paris beam back down with a special, like a big kind of dish that they can use to get a closer reading on things. And they scan around, and they're able to find this Mr. Drickle, who's basically dying in the snow. He's been trapped under this thing partially, so they find him, and they find that he's got this special belt, and they figure that's what makes him invisible. They beam him up to the ship. They take off the belt, and they fix him up, make him right again, because that's what they do. It's Starfleet, and now they can work together to save the away team. So let's go back to what's going on with the away team now. So they are basically awaiting the decision of the council, and they've been given this mediator, or someone who's kind of going to plead their case for them, and his name is Rollick, and he is he's actually genuinely like sympathetic, and he seems to want to help them out. But according to all of the laws and rules and regulations of this planet, they apparently have like broken more than like 800 of them, and some of them quite severe. They're due to be put to death. So this is a very interesting part of this book too, because they're at the point now where like they're basically waiting to find out what's going to happen. And so they're like talking through, like, we're not just going to sit here to die. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. But then they're like, well, everything that we try is just going to be stopped anyway because they're going to just go back and stop us. But then the guy, Rollick, comes in and says the council's made their decision. And you all want to have your breakfast. And he gives them some juice and some breakfast, and they drink the juice. The juice is poison. The juice is poison, right? And it's at this point he explains that this is like the fourth time that they've had to go back to figure out a way to, I guess, inform them that they've been sentenced to death. Because each time that they came back to do it, B'Elanna, Kim, and Neelix would break out, kill the guards, do this, do that, do something else. And so they determined that the only way they could really do this is to sneak in and poison them. And that's what they do. So then that ends right there with like B'Elanna falling asleep from this poison. And then you go back to Janeway and Mr. Drickle there, back on Voyager, and they're trying to figure out a way that they can save the crew. They need to save the away team. So they go back down, Tuvok, Paris, Janeway, and Drickle, back down to the tunnel with the old time ship in it, and they are trying to figure out a way to go back in time, save the away team, who technically at this point is already dead. Like, Rollick did poison and kill them. But when they're coming up with all these different plans, each one of them is kind of thwarted because there's some sort of time paradox or time loop or some awful time thing that happens when they do it. And they cannot come up with a way to save the away team. So finally, after going around and around and around for a while, Drickle comes up with a plan. The only way to save the away team would be to let everything play out or look like it played out as it already has. And then Janeway recovers their bodies. It turns out they weren't really killed, only given a poison to make them look like they were dead. Bing, bang, boom, Voyager and Janeway take off, and the timeline continues. And that's what they go ahead and do. So Janeway and Drickle travel back in time, first to the initial 300,000 period years, and then they even go millions of years beyond that to like year one or whatever. They're the main year where they do everything there. So they get back there, they meet up with Rollick, and from the perspective of us, the reader, and Janeway, it's just like they meet up with Rollick, and then Mr. Drickle kind of looks back and he's like, "Success, we did it," gives him a thumbs up, But and they take the coffins, with the dead crewmen inside, and then when Rollick shakes her hand, he puts a little piece of paper into her hand, and he tells her that that's the antidote, and they only have an hour left before they can get them back and give them the antidote. So she thanks him profusely, and then asks Drickle, like, how long did that really take? And it turns out that little short period in the book was actually a period of 3 months of real time, but then they just back-timed to get to the solution. So, again, this time travel stuff, it's kind of mind-bending to think about, but just, like, very interesting how, like, this kind of stuff was done. So Janeway spent 3 months with Mr. Drickle and Rollick and trying to work out a way to do this properly. And they did. And then they just back-timed it right before it happened. And boom, there they go. So, just very cool time travel stuff and very well done. So yeah, they get him back to the ship. They bring him back to life. Everybody's okay. Mr. Jander ends up kind of joining forces with Mr. Drickle and is going to become his assistant, because it's determined that since he had so much trouble, maybe it's kind of a good time he could have an assistant. And also the people that are good at his job are people that are Jander, who are kind of like against the rules and kind of go against everything. So, yeah, I think I covered pretty much everything. And that was 25 minutes, man. Let's look at that picture again. So again, I'm going to look into who did this, because I think that is really cool. But yeah, the time ships, uh, very interesting stuff in this book. I love just I like to think about time travel. It's fun to think about, and then the paradoxes, and I didn't even get into the fact that not only were these people traveling through time, but they were creating multiple timelines and dimensions and traveling between them as well, you know? And they thought that the people that traveled between planets were crazy, right? But when you think about it, it's intriguing because they have this planet with like 5 billion years of history. And then they have just this small period that they've been there. But then they figure out a way to take their ever expanding population, and instead of expanding it to the stars, they expand it to the past. And it's so much to think about. It's crazy. So if you want to get yourself into a nice little time paradox thought loop and have some fun with a nice early season Voyager book, then read The Escape by Dean Wesley Smith and Kristine Kathryn Rusch, because it's fun, and I'm glad that I did. Now, unfortunately, I don't have Star Trek Voyager number 3, but hopefully we'll remedy that soon. So where do I go from here? I don't know, but probably TNG 41, because I haven't visited my old friends from the Enterprise D in maybe a month or so. So we'll probably head that direction. But then I want to jump right back into more Voyager, because it certainly was a good time. So yeah, that was The Escape, and we're going to move on to the next one now. As always, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Live long and prosper, and we'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.